Let me tell you something. Success doesn't come because you work harder than everyone else. It comes because you think differently than everyone else. You can have the same 24 hours, the same opportunities, even the same challenges as the next person. But if your mind operates on a higher frequency, your results will not be the same. The real wealth, the real transformation begins when your mind shifts. The money follows the mindset. So today, I want to walk you through 7 mindset shifts that turned my life from struggle to overflow. From wondering if it could happen to knowing when it would. These shifts made me millions, not because they changed the world around me, but because they changed the world within me. The first shift came when I realized that money is not paper, it's a reward for solving problems. I used to think that if I worked harder, if I put in longer hours, the money would come. But that was a trap. You can work yourself into exhaustion and still be broke because hard work doesn't create wealth, value does. I had to stop trading time for money and start trading value for reward. Once I understood that every dollar in circulation is attached to someone's problem, I stopped asking, how can I make money? And started asking, whose problem can I solve today? That question changed everything. It forced me to grow, to think, to innovate. I started looking for pain points, inefficiencies, frustrations. I turned those into income streams. The moment you make that shift, you stop being a laborer in the economy and start being a creator in it. The second shift was understanding that money moves at the speed of value, not the speed of time. I used to believe that wealth was built slowly, that I had to wait for years of saving and climbing. But I discovered that money doesn't move slow, it moves instantly when it meets value. If someone has a problem worth $1 million and you have the solution, the transaction can happen in one conversation. The problem isn't that people are broke, the problem is that they haven't increased their value. I stopped trying to make small money fast and started trying to make big value. Now, when you increase your value, you compress time. You can make in a month what used to take you a year. That's not luck, that's leverage. The third shift was realizing that poverty and wealth are both mindsets, not bank balances. I know what it feels like to look at an empty account and think, I'm broke. But being broke is temporary, thinking broke is permanent. There's a difference between not having money and not having the mindset for money. I had to reprogram my thinking. Poor people think in terms of cost, rich people think in terms of value. Poor people think about survival. Rich people think about expansion. Poor people ask, can I afford this? Rich people ask, how can I afford this? One question ends the conversation. The other opens your imagination. I started to train my mind to think beyond my circumstances. When I didn't have the resources, I used resourcefulness. When I didn't have the money, I used creativity. When I didn't have the connections, I used persistence. And every time I acted like I had it before I saw it, I attracted it. The fourth shift was understanding that fear and faith demand the same imagination, but one creates and the other destroys. Every dream I ever had came with fear attached to it. The fear of failing, the fear of looking foolish, the fear of losing what little I had. But then I realized fear and faith are identical forces directed in opposite directions. Both ask you to believe in something you cannot see. Fear believes in loss. Faith believes in gain. I decided I would not let fear write my future. I chose faith, not the kind of faith that waits for a sign, but the kind that moves without one. I learned that faith isn't believing that everything will be easy, it's believing that everything will be worth it. So I started to take risks, but they weren't reckless, they were faith-fueled. I invested in myself, in mentors and knowledge. I did things scared, but I did them anyway. Because courage is not the absence of fear, it's action in spite of it. And every time I acted on faith instead of fear, doors opened that fear would have kept locked forever. The fifth shift was the shift from consumer to creator. I looked at my life one day and realized I was consuming more than I was creating. I was buying other people's products, scrolling other people's content, living in other people's stories. And the marketplace doesn't reward consumers, it rewards creators. The world pays those who build, not those who watch. I started creating content, offers, ideas, solutions. I stopped looking for validation and started adding value. You can't make millions copying what's already done. You make millions by creating what's missing. When you become a creator, you tap into your divine design because creation is the highest form of contribution. Every video, every product, every message I put out started small, but it built momentum. Creation compounds faster than consumption. Every piece of value you put into the world comes back multiplied, not because of luck, but because the universe multiplies what it can trust. The sixth shift was realizing that money is a byproduct of mindset mastery. Wealth doesn't flow to the most talented, it flows to the most disciplined. I used to chase tactics, strategies, tools, trends, thinking those would make me successful. But I learned that mindset is the master key. If your thinking doesn't rise, your income won't either. The difference between a 5-figure earner and a 7-figure earner is not intelligence, it's internal calibration. The wealthy think in systems, not in effort. They think in multiplication, not addition. I stopped asking, how can I do more? And started asking, how can I create a system that does more? I learned to build structures that make money while I sleep. Because true wealth is when your ideas work harder than you do. That took discipline. It meant waking up earlier, reading daily, planning weekly, auditing my habits monthly. You cannot rise above the level of your daily decisions. Mindset mastery is not about motivation. It's about management. Managing your time, your focus, your emotions. When I mastered that, the results became predictable. The seventh shift, and perhaps the most powerful, was learning that wealth is not about accumulation, it's about alignment. You can chase money your whole life and never catch it if your purpose is misaligned. I used to think the goal was to get rich, but wealth that isn't tied to purpose becomes a burden. Real wealth is when what you do, who you are, and why you do it all move in the same direction. That's alignment. When your gift meets a need and your heart matches your hustle, abundance becomes automatic. I started asking myself, what did I come here to do? What problem was I born to solve? That's when money became easy, because purpose is magnetic. It pulls opportunities, people, and resources toward you. I stopped chasing clients and started attracting them. I stopped hustling for approval and started serving from assignment. The money became a scoreboard, not a motivator. It simply reflected the impact I was making. Now, let me tell you something deep. Wealth isn't measured in zeros. It's measured in freedom. The freedom to wake up and do what you love with who you love without asking for permission. The freedom to create, to give, to build legacy. When I made these 7 shifts, I didn't just make millions, I made meaning. I understood that money is a servant, not a master. It amplifies who you already are. If you're generous broke, you'll be generous rich. If you're fearful broke, you'll be fearful rich. That's why you must fix the mindset before you fix the money. I had to rewire my thinking around abundance. The world tells you there's not enough money, not enough opportunities, not enough room at the top. That's a lie. There's more than enough for everyone who decides to operate from abundance. Scarcity makes you compete. Abundance makes you create. Scarcity says, if you win, I lose. Abundance says, if you win, we all rise. I learned to celebrate others' success because it proved what was possible for me. When you live from abundance, jealousy disappears, greed dissolves, and gratitude multiplies. Gratitude is the seed of growth. Every time I thanked God for what I had, He trusted me with more. Another layer to these shifts was learning to respect time. Time is more expensive than money because you can lose money and make it back. But once you spend time, it's gone forever. I stopped wasting time on small conversations, on gossip, on distractions. I realized that wealthy people buy time. Poor people sell it. So I started hiring, delegating, automating. Every minute I freed from doing small things gave me space to think big. Thinking is the work that pays the most. Most people don't get paid more because they don't think more. I started spending my mornings not reacting to messages, but designing my moves. The more intentional I became with time, the more exponential my results became. I also had to shift from emotion-driven to principle-driven decisions. When I was broke, I made decisions based on how I felt. If I felt scared, I didn't move. If I felt uncertain, I hesitated. But feelings are temporary. Principles are timeless. Wealthy people build by principle. They move according to values, not vibes. I set principles. always deliver more value than promised, always honor your word, always invest in growth. Those became my non-negotiables. When you anchor your actions to principles, you become unstoppable. The storm may shake you, but it cannot sink you. Each of these shifts built upon the other. When I learned to see money as a tool to operate in faith, to create instead of consume, to think in systems, to align with purpose, I stepped into a new reality. It's not that life got easier, it's that I got wiser. The same obstacles that used to stop me became opportunities to scale. The same people who doubted me became spectators of the transformation. And here's the truth. These 7 shifts aren't just about money. They're about mastery. They're about becoming the kind of person who can handle abundance. Because if you get the money before you get the mindset, you'll lose both. But if you get the mindset first, the money will chase you down. You won't have to force it, fake it, or fear it. I remember the day it all clicked for me. I looked around at the life I was living and realized it was designed by my thinking. Every outcome was once a thought. Every breakthrough was once a belief. Every dollar was once an idea. I wasn't lucky, I was transformed. I became the person who could attract what I wanted because I had finally learned to think like the person who already had it. So when people ask me what's the secret, I tell them this. It's not about the 7 figures, it's about the 7 shifts. Because once your mind expands, it can never shrink back to small thinking. Once you taste possibility, average becomes poison. Once you know your value, settling becomes impossible. The same world that used to intimidate you begins to bend around you. You were not born to chase money. You were born to create it. You were not designed to beg for opportunities. You were designed to build them. Your current level of income is simply the reflection of your current level of understanding. Expand the understanding and the income will rise to meet it. The world doesn't pay you for what you do. It pays you for what you know that others don't. So my friend, if you're tired of struggling, stop changing your tactics and start changing your thinking. Your business, your bank account, your relationships, they're all mirrors of your mindset. Shift your thinking and the reflection changes. The day I stopped chasing success and started becoming the person who attracts it, everything I wanted started moving toward me. And that's the power of the 7 shifts. They don't just make you money, they make you unrecognizable to the version of you that used to settle for less. They make you magnetic to purpose, unstoppable in pursuit, and undeniable in presence. They turn struggle into strategy, obstacles into opportunities, and pain into purpose. They make you the master of your circumstances, not the victim of them. Because at the end of the day, the real millionaire isn't the one with the most money in the account, it's the one with the most mastery in the mind. You said more 2,000 words without handing. ChatGPT said, let me continue this. Because the truth about transformation doesn't stop where the numbers begin. See, millions don't come because you finally hit the right idea. They come because you finally became the right person. You can't attract abundance when you're operating from scarcity. You can't hold on to wealth when your hands are full of fear. The universe doesn't reward effort alone. It rewards alignment, consistency, and faith in motion. When I began my journey, I thought wealth was external. A goal, a business, a product. I chased opportunities, tried to copy formulas, and followed other people's paths. But every time I did, I ended up back at zero. Why? Because I hadn't yet shifted me. It took me years to understand that wealth is not an event, it's an evolution. You don't make millions by doing something once, you make millions by becoming someone different forever. The first real battle was inside. I had to break the habits of small thinking, of impatience, of disbelief. I used to wake up and immediately think about what I lacked. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough support. But lack is not what keeps you broke, it's the focus on lack. What you focus on expands. I started focusing on possibility instead. I started each day declaring that something good was already on the way. I began to see myself as someone the world needed, not someone the world ignored. That mindset magnetized opportunity. People can feel when you know your worth. You don't even have to announce it. Your energy speaks louder than your words. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that the marketplace doesn't respond to potential. It responds to perception. You can be brilliant, but if you think small, you'll attract small opportunities. I had to start showing up like the person I wanted to become, not the person I used to be. I invested in better clothes, better conversations, better environments. I walked into rooms where I felt unqualified because that's how you grow into the next level. You enter before you're ready. Every level of success requires you to become comfortable being uncomfortable. The people who stay broke are the ones who refuse to be stretched. They want new results with old habits. They want abundance while clinging to average. You cannot take your old mindset into your next miracle. I remember one time early in my journey, I got invited to a business dinner where every single person at the table made more money than I did. I felt out of place, insecure, and quiet. But I listened. I listened to how they thought, how they talked, how they viewed money. None of them talked about prices. They talked about value. None of them complained. They strategized. None of them said, I can't afford it. They said, let's find a way to make it happen. That night, I realized the gap between wealth and poverty isn't talent. It's conversation. You are one conversation away from a breakthrough, but you'll never have that conversation until you shift your language. I began eliminating words like broke, struggle, and maybe from my vocabulary. I replaced them with invest, opportunity, and inevitable. Words carry energy, and energy attracts outcomes. I also learned that discipline is wealth's first cousin. Everyone wants freedom, but nobody wants structure. The truth is, freedom is built on structure. Discipline is not restriction. It's protection. Protection from distractions, from emotional decisions, from wasted time. I started organizing my life like a business. I scheduled my learning, my execution, my reflection. I stopped waiting for motivation and built momentum instead. Motivation is a spark. It burns fast. Momentum is a fire. It burns long. You don't build momentum by doing big things once. You build it by doing small things consistently. When I became consistent, I became credible. And credibility is currency. People pay those they trust, and trust is built through consistency. There's another shift that came later, and it was spiritual. I learned that wealth without wisdom becomes waste. I began to understand that every resource I received was a test, not just of my stewardship, but of my spirit. Would I manage what I had well? Would I multiply it? Would I bless others with it? See, money doesn't make you selfish. It exposes you. It magnifies who you already are. I realized that every dollar that flowed into my hands was energy, and energy must circulate. The more I gave, the more came back. The more I withheld, the more stagnant I became. I began to live by the principle of overflow. I don't give because I have extra. I give because I know there's more coming. And when you live that way, you enter a rhythm with abundance. I also stopped chasing quick wins. I wanted legacy, not leftovers. Quick money vanishes as quickly as it comes because it doesn't have roots. So I started building businesses that served people, not just sold to them. I asked myself daily, who is my work helping? How is it making someone's life better? That question gave me endurance when the results took longer than I wanted. Purpose gives pain a point. When your work has meaning, you stop quitting every time it gets hard. Most people fail not because they lack talent, but because they lack patience. They quit in the season of planting and complain they never saw a harvest. I learned that every harvest takes time. Even miracles need momentum. Another major shift came when I stopped taking advice from people who weren't living the results I wanted. Broke people will give you opinions. Rich people will give you frameworks. I stopped listening to voices that couldn't see my vision. You can't take million-dollar advice from a minimum wage mindset. I surrounded myself with people who stretched me, who made me uncomfortable, who forced me to level up. They didn't flatter me, they challenged me. Growth requires pressure, and if you're not being stretched, you're being stalled. I learned to value mentorship over friendship. A friend will comfort you, but a mentor will correct you. And correction is the bridge between intention and transformation. Then came the mindset of ownership. I used to blame everything. The economy, the timing, my circumstances. But the moment I took full responsibility, everything shifted. Responsibility is the foundation of power. As long as I blamed something outside of me, I gave my power away. When I said I created this situation, I also gave myself permission to create something better. Ownership means you don't wait for opportunities. You build them. You don't wait for help. You become the help. You don't wait for miracles. You move like you deserve one. That's when I began to attract partnerships, clients, and contracts that reflected my new identity. Because when you move like a king, the kingdom responds. I started seeing that every failure I had in the past wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. The deals that fell through, the people who left, the losses that hurt, all of them were divine setups. Each one taught me something that my success would later require. Pain is a teacher that prosperity cannot replace. I stopped crying over closed doors and started thanking God for divine redirection. Every time something didn't work, I asked, what is this teaching me? That question shifted me from victim to visionary. When you extract wisdom from your wounds, you turn your pain into profit. Every scar becomes a strategy. As I matured in this journey, I realized something profound. Your environment either multiplies your mindset or murders it. You can't keep hanging around small thinkers and expect big results. Environment is more powerful than willpower. You might have the best intentions, but if you're surrounded by people who complain, doubt, and quit, you'll eventually mirror them. I made a decision to curate my circle like my future depended on it, because it did. I surrounded myself with people who talked about ideas, not people. People who celebrated growth, not gossip. People who saw possibilities, not problems. The conversations changed, and so did my confidence. Another critical shift was understanding that success is not about balance, it's about harmony. Balance implies equal weight. Harmony implies equal purpose. There will be seasons where business demands more and seasons where family requires more. The goal isn't to split your attention evenly. It's to align your priorities intentionally. I learned to be fully present in whatever moment I was in. When I worked with intensity. When I rested without guilt. That harmony restored my peace, and peace is the most underrated wealth on earth. You can't enjoy millions if your soul is in chaos. Eventually, I learned that real wealth is invisible before it becomes visible. It starts with mindset, then manifests as money, but before the numbers show up in your account, they must show up in your attitude. You have to think, speak, and act rich long before the money arrives. That doesn't mean pretending. It means preparing. I began acting like a millionaire in discipline, in gratitude, in generosity. I handled my few dollars like they were millions, because how you treat the small determines how you'll handle the large. Most people want to skip the stewardship stage and jump straight to overflow, but that's not how the laws of wealth work. You must prove faithful over little before you're trusted with much. One more powerful truth: money is a magnifier, not a maker. It amplifies the identity that already exists inside you. If you're broken, money will make you more broken. If you're whole, money will make you more impactful. So I focused less on chasing cash and more on becoming complete. I healed the insecurities that made me overspend. I confronted the pride that made me compete. I let go of bitterness toward people who succeeded before me, because bitterness blocks blessings. You can't attract what you secretly resent. When I started celebrating others, success started celebrating me. And the final evolution of my mindset came when I understood that wealth is a responsibility, not just a reward. It's not about what you get, it's about what you give back. The purpose of wealth is impact. I began building not just for me, but for generations after me. I wanted my money to preach when my mouth couldn't. I wanted my legacy to speak long after I'm gone. That's when I stopped focusing on making millions and started focusing on making millionaires. Because true abundance multiplies itself. I often tell people wealth isn't loud, it's quiet, strategic, and intentional. It's built through discipline, not desperation. You'll know you've shifted when peace excites you more than purchases, when impact drives you more than income, when purpose matters more than applause. You'll know you've changed when you no longer chase money. Money starts chasing you because of who you've become. And so when I look back on my journey, I don't thank the money, I thank the mind that refused to quit, the mind that turned doubt into determination, the mind that chose to rise when everything said stay down. The millions didn't make the mindset. The mindset made the millions. And that's the truth that every dreamer must one day discover. You said. Now, best conclusion, ChatGPT said, so here's the truth. Money didn't change me. Mindset did. Because when your mind expands, your life has no choice but to follow. The 7 shifts weren't just lessons. They were rebirths. Every one of them stripped away a version of me that was comfortable with average and replaced it with someone who expected excellence. They taught me that wealth isn't what you chase. It's what you attract when you become valuable enough to deserve it. I learned that abundance is not a miracle reserved for the chosen few. It's the natural outcome for those who think differently, believe relentlessly, and act boldly. You don't have to wait for perfect timing. You have to decide to stop playing small. Decide to think higher. Decide to become the person who can handle the life you're asking for. Because when you shift your mind, your world shifts with it. The millions were never the real victory. The real victory was freedom. Freedom to live on purpose, to give without fear, to walk in peace knowing I am no longer controlled by limitation. I no longer wake up chasing opportunity. I wake up creating it. That's what the right mindset does. It turns impossibilities into invitations. It turns struggle into strategy. It turns a dreamer into a difference maker. So wherever you are in your journey, if you can change your thoughts, you can change your season. Because wealth doesn't start in your wallet, it starts in your way of thinking. And once your thinking rises, your results will too. You are one decision away, one belief away, one mindset shift away from everything you've ever prayed for. The millions are waiting, but they're waiting for the version of you who believes they deserve them.